do. So just checking the connection.
Hey,
They're
how are
here.
you?
Hey, how are you?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm good. Good, good. It's finally starting to warm up. We had like a lot of rain and it was like freezing for a while, so I'm just like, finally. It's been good. How about you?
Yeah,
Can you
I'm
hear
in
me okay?
Atlanta, so I feel like it's always just too hot. But
Oh, oh, I know, right? Hey, Sky. Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you everyone for joining me this morning. Hope everyone's doing really good. I'm live here in Denver, Colorado. As Keisha just mentioned, she's live here in Atlanta. We just want to thank you for joining us here. And I want to thank everyone too for just coming on for these Tuesdays and Thursdays. I love featuring some really amazing individuals, and I'm super, super excited about today's guest. So I'd love to introduce you all to the lovely Keshia. So I'm going to read her bio here. Keshia Rice is a dating coach and a two-time Emmy-nominated journalist. As a coach, Keshia helps successful Christian women learn how to attract quality men without compromising their values, identity, or sanity. As the daughter, sister, and niece of preachers, Keshia understands what it's like to be a Christian woman, to balance a conservative upbringing with the modern hookup culture. And like many women in the corporate world, Keshia also knows the challenges of being ambitious while maintaining your femininity. Femininity. Oh my gosh, I cannot say that word. um, Keisha and her husband live in Atlanta, Georgia. When she's not coaching or producing TV newscasts, she loves to travel, and she's been to several states and 10 countries. That's amazing. So Keisha, I just want to thank you so much for being here today. I was super excited about this, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like you're going to talk about boundaries, and I know that they're your jam, so I'm like super pumped.
yes, boundaries are incredibly important. I think when you have your boundaries abused enough times, you realize how important they are.
Absolutely. Very good. Okay, so let's dive in. First of all, can you tell us briefly about your journey and how you got started? Hey, Carlton. Hey, Bailey.
Yeah, so my journey into self-development and becoming a coach started with a bit of a quarter life crisis. So basically, I was at this point where I was not happy with the men I was dating, with the relationships that I was in, and I was not happy with the TV station that I worked with at the time,
Mm,
and just all of these different areas of my life were not going well. And meanwhile, Instagram and Facebook have a lovely way of reminding you how much your life sucks when you're in
mm,
those seasons of your life. So
mhm.
I was going through that, and it was just all my friends were, yay, I'm getting engaged. Yay, I'm getting married. Yay, I'm having a baby.
Yep.
Yay, I just got promoted. I just got this new job. And it happened that one day I was planning a friend's wedding shower, and I just broke down in tears.
Oh, yeah.
And I was just like, you know what? I don't know exactly even what it is that I want out of life. I don't even know how to get to a place of happy, but
Mhm.
wherever that is, this is not it. And I will
Yeah.
do whatever it takes to get out of this.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I feel like it takes a little bit of crisis to like, make those big changes and stuff too. Um, so how long have you been coaching for?
I always joke because officially I have been a coach for 2 years.
Mhm,
Unofficially, when you grow up as the daughter of a minister, you sometimes feel
mhm,
like you don't get a lot of attention. So
mhm,
I found it elsewhere. I started dating at a young age, and there were
mhm.
women in my church who were coming to me when I was 16 and 17. They were in their 20s, 30s, and 40s coming to me for dating advice. So
Wow.
unofficially, I've been doing this for like 15 years.
Oh my gosh, wow. So good. Hey, Scott. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. Okay, so today we're talking about boundaries. Can you first start out by sharing, like what's your definition of what boundaries are, and why do you think they're very important?
Yeah, I feel like people make boundaries more complicated than they have to be. Like
Hmm.
even the word sounds a little bit harsh,
Right.
like, oh, boundary. And a
Uh-huh.
boundary is what are the things that you need to feel comfortable around other
Mhm.
people. So a boundary for me is my personal time is very important to me. So I'm married, with my
Mhm.
husband. There's a boundary of, hey, when I'm finished working for the day, I need to just go be by myself for a second, whether
Mhm.
that's to journal or to take a nap or whatever it is, I just need that 20, 30 minutes to myself before I can, be out of work mode and into wife mode.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. It almost helps you like kind of reset and recalibrate, right?
Yeah.
That's
Boundaries
good.
can be things like certain topics can be sensitive to you and you don't feel comfortable talking about those things. Um, you mentioned that I used to be a full-time journalist, and even now I still do it on a freelance basis. So sometimes certain events in the news, um,
Mm-hmm.
they can be very triggering, and I already have to deal with them in that situation. So when a friend calls me, it's like, yeah, I can't talk about that right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, totally. I feel like it's really important because you have to set them up for yourself in order for those relationships to thrive too, right? So a lot of people do feel guilty about setting boundaries. Like I'll be honest, like that's me as well. Because like I definitely want to be able to help, and especially like in a work setting too. I want to be able to just be available and just be able to help. But I do feel guilty about setting boundaries sometimes. What advice or thoughts do you have regarding this?
Yeah, and especially as women in particular, there's this whole perception of what makes a good girl,
Hmm.
what we do and what we don't do. And a lot of that comes to catering to other people's needs and making other people feel comfortable. So whenever we look out for ourselves, there's this idea that it's selfish.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
exactly.
that can be so hard for us to work around. I sometimes still have those moments myself. What you have to remember is you can't be good to others if you aren't good to yourself.
That's great advice. Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
very practical. Like we're a lot of us are working from home right now,
Hmm.
and there's this whole idea of how do I distinguish and establish that boundary between work life and home life. And a
Hmm.
boss may feel comfortable sending text messages way past your
Yeah.
work hour, or emails and things like that. And you can't be productive on your job if you have no rest time in between.
Yeah, exactly. I think everyone thinks it's like, it's all about the hustle when it's
Yeah.
not necessarily the case, right? Because there's other aspects to life too.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. And
yeah,
even with,
totally.
and I was gonna say, even with relationships, people
Mhm.
feel, especially when it comes to certain topics. Um, I know with my dad, we've had arguments about certain things, and when it comes up, I'm like, hey, we can't talk about this.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
that's just not going to happen. And a lot of people feel guilty about setting those types of boundaries, but the fact is, I'm not a good daughter if every time he calls, I'm like, I'm not answering that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to talk to him right now. I can't deal. I'm not a good daughter if we're having a conversation and I'm spending the entire time angry and irritated,
Yeah.
you know?
Mhm. Yeah,
So
totally.
when that boundary is established, we have a good relationship.
Hmm. That's so good. That's really great. Because I was just thinking too, as you're speaking to that, like, you find yourself like avoiding a
Yeah.
lot of things too. Yeah, completely. Can you share a little bit about, some of the biggest mistakes that you've seen people make as it comes to setting boundaries in their personal and professional relationships?
Yeah.
It's a very loaded question.
No, I was going to say one being inspired, but not being ready to be resilient in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I post a lot of content about
Hmm.
setting boundaries, taking care of yourself, loving yourself.
Hmm.
And I will get messages from women and they're like, you're so right. Like I totally need to do that. And I totally
Yep.
need to set this boundary with my boyfriend, with my mom, with whoever. And they set the boundary and the very first time they set it, they get shot down because it's gonna happen. Like if people are
Hmm.
used to treating you a certain way, they're gonna try to continue that.
Yeah, exactly.
So so they get shot down the first time and they're like, yeah, that the boundaries thing, that doesn't work for me. Like you don't know my family, you don't know my friends. And I'm like, no,
Hmm.
I know those people because that is everyone. I've
Yeah.
had friends who've set boundaries with me and I've been like, well, that's always what we've talked about, or that's always what we've
Hmm.
done. And you have to learn how to adjust. Other people will learn how to adjust too.
Yeah. No, that's really great advice too. Just because I'm even thinking about that because I was super excited about our live today too because I love all of your content and I was just like super excited to feature you. Oh, I think it froze. Can you hear
Okay,
me?
yeah, we're back.
Okay, cool, cool, cool. Yeah, yeah. I was saying that, I've seen your content. I love your content. I'm totally one of those people too. And I was super excited about today's live and just featuring you because I've always been like really inspired about that. But you're right. When it comes to putting it into action, it's a different story. And like I still find myself feeling a little bit of that guilt or when I do try and then I get shot down, it's like it feels like a massive failure, right? But I know it's important to keep going on it, right?
Yeah,
um, yeah, especially for the betterment of the relationship too. Okay, so I love your content too about self-love. Can you share a little bit about why self-love is important in any relationship or in any new endeavor or even in business too? Because I know that that's certainly like very important at the core.
yeah. People can only love you at the level that you love yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do not have those things in place to really love yourself, you are setting yourself up for failure. So when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to career and business, when you don't have proper boundaries set up with your boss or with your clients, then you end up in situations where you get asked to do things that you aren't equipped to do. And then you
Mm-hmm.
try to do those and you fail. And then people are like, well, she's not very good at her job. She can't do that. And it's like, well, no,
Oh,
like you asked me to do something that I was never able to do to begin with. Or people abuse your time because you don't have those time boundaries set. And then you end up burnt out and you're less productive. And then
mm-hmm.
you get frustrated with yourself, especially women, but men too. But we especially deal with
Yeah.
imposter syndrome, and that just
Yes.
amplifies that.
Yeah.
So,
Totally.
in a career, business environment, you definitely can't do that. When it comes to your family and your friends, I always tell people you don't really know how willing the people who love you are to step
Mm.
in and help because you never ask, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I see this
Yeah.
happen all the time where, a friend of mine or a client will complain, like, oh, they just take advantage of me all the time. They're always asking me to do things that, I don't have the time to do. They don't realize I'm over here running a business or that I have a life too. And
Mm-hmm.
if you are always handling stuff, people just assume that you got it. Like, it's not like they're
Yeah.
malicious.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that they're
That's so
trying to be
true.
evil. It's just you've always had it. So, what reason do they have to
Mm-hmm.
believe that you would need help?
Yeah. Oh, that is so true. Like I'm just hearing because like sometimes it just backfires. And I think I tried to be a lot better about this when I was like working back in finance, right? I would only talk to clients during working hours because in the very beginning when I first started, I would talk to them like on the evenings, on weekends, and then a year rolls by, 2 years roll by, it's time to do our annual review, and they're like, "Yeah, can we meet on a Saturday again?" I'm just like, I kind of did that to myself, right?
Yeah, you
um,
created that environment.
Yeah, 100%. I'm glad that you shared that. So question that was submitted, what if your boss is your partner? Any advice for the couple? It's a great question.
Yeah, you definitely have to, the same way with a normal job.
Mhm.
Or when your boss isn't your partner or you're in any other type of business
Yeah.
relationship, you have to set those boundaries. And the two of you are going to have to start catching each other on, if we've decided our working hours are Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, like we're going to do those traditional business hours. Then if
Mhm.
something work related comes up at 8:30, then it's going to have to wait half an hour, you know?
Yeah.
You're
Exactly.
really going
That
to
is
have
so
to learn
true.
how to set those boundaries. And even in the work environment, you know,
Mhm.
my husband is not an entrepreneur, but there were a couple of weeks where he had like this side hustle project that he was working
Mhm.
on, and I was helping him with it. And he'd be like, we'd be working on something together, like I was
Mhm.
helping him like write an ad, something like that.
Yeah.
And he'd be like I'm on the laptop typing, and he'd be like putting his arm around me and cuddling and all, and I'm like, not right now. Like,
Oh,
and
you're in the zone.
it's and it's not being mean, but you have to
Mhm.
have those lines. because
Mhm.
otherwise everything blurs together. And it's all fun
Yeah.
and games when, the two of you decide to cuddle on the couch for a few minutes and watch a TV show. It's not so fun 8 hours later when the two of you are up late still working on this
Yeah.
project that didn't get done
Yeah.
because, yeah.
Exactly. Oh, so accurate, right? Oh my gosh. I find that happening too. Like, it got to the point where like I wanted to, because my partner and I work together as well, and he and I have to have like digital boundaries, right? So it's like we do all of our work communication on like Slack, and then like
Yeah,
we're back doing the long distance thing right now because he's back in the UK and I'm here. But when we text, I like don't want anything work related. Like don't want to hear it.
yeah,
So. Okay, yeah. So for some couples in my audience, what if one partner is the entrepreneur and one partner has a steady job? And it develops like it creates this interesting dynamic too. What advice do you have for them on setting boundaries? Because I know as entrepreneurs and small business owners, we love telling our partners like everything, latest funnel we just created, like the newest
yeah.
things that are coming up. Yeah, what advice do you have around that?
Yeah, so I think you have to look at that from both perspectives. So if you
Mhm.
are the entrepreneur, you have to set the boundaries with this is a real business.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
when quarantine started, I don't have that luxury of you with being long distance. My husband and I
Mhm.
are married and in the same house.
Uh-huh.
So there were times where, he wasn't working. So he's like, hey babe, look at this Facebook video. And it's
Yep.
not like I don't appreciate that because, I know the video is going to be funny and all that, but
Mhm.
it is my working hours. And yes, my
Yeah.
office is at home, but it is an office.
Yep.
So, it needs
So
to be
true.
treated as such. And also, I had to realize that part of that was me too, because
Mhm.
I had these habits of, I would be in my office and I would get distracted and
Mhm.
I would pull out like YouTube videos or Facebook videos,
Mhm.
or
Yep.
I would be bored because, I'm in between two clients or whatever.
Mhm.
So I would come out of the office and go to my husband and be like, hey, what are you up to?
Yep.
So I had to set that example for him too.
Yeah.
Because when I first brought that up to him, he was like, "But you do it all the time. You come out and ask me, you know."
Yep.
So,
Oh my
so
gosh.
yeah, if you are the entrepreneur, it is taking your own business seriously.
Mhm.
And then once you're doing that, making sure that you have those boundaries. If you are the person who is not the entrepreneur, it is setting a boundary with your person who is in business because, you and I here in business, we get so excited about what we
Mhm.
do and we get really
Yep.
passionate about it. And, we have our triumphs of when like a funnel is not working and all
Yeah.
of a sudden we make this one little tweak and it starts working.
Yeah.
And, with my husband, he had to get to a point where he would tell me, like, I get that you love this stuff and that is really exciting for you, but not so much for me. And it was even things like we kind of started setting, like, it's not like he has a timer, for
Mhm.
how long I talk about it, but he kind of allows like one story and then he's like, okay, cool. You had your one
Yep.
story, let's talk about something else now.
Yeah. Oh, it's so funny. I'm laughing because it's like it's so accurate. I'm like, that's so us too. And it's just like, and it becomes difficult too when you don't set those boundaries because you do find yourselves just like talking about it like over and over and over when you can tell like they're done hearing it, right?
Yeah.
Completely.
So
That's so
yeah, on
good.
both sides, as the entrepreneur, take your business seriously, and then let your partner know these are the things that I need in order
Mhm.
to, have my business thriving so that we get bills paid around this house.
Yeah. Hmm.
And then when you're not the entrepreneur, being having that understanding and saying, "Hey, I love you. I know you're so excited about your business.
Hmm.
I don't understand half of it." And it doesn't excite me the same way as you. What excites me is when you bring home money, but maybe not so much the
Yeah.
rest of it. So how about you talk about this over dinner and then after that we talk about something else? How about you
Yeah.
just tell me one story about your day today and then after that we talk about something else?
Hmm. That's awesome. That's great advice. Hey,
Yeah.
Jasmine. Hey, Angel. Thank you guys for joining. No, I think that's really great advice. Someone even told me too, like even calendaring, especially like during uncertain times right now too, while we're like in quarantine. My boyfriend was out here for, I think, so he flew out here in March for my birthday. We went out for like my birthday week, and he was just like, "Why are we going out every single night?" I'm like, "It's my birthday week. We have to do everything, something every day."
Yeah.
And then literally the week after, everything was on lockdown. So I'm like, "Aren't you glad we went out?" But it was like someone was also sharing like, you should schedule in time to just like turn off, do a date night or do something like that. Do you have any little tips for couples right now as they are trying to survive quarantine?
Yeah, in general. So, with my husband, I tell him when I first wake up in the morning and right before I go to bed at night. Um, I like that time to journal and to meditate,
Mhm.
and I really don't want to be disturbed during that time. That is the
Yeah,
time.
protecting
I've,
your
I've told
energy.
him that's the time that keeps me calm, so that I'm not a crazy,
Mhm.
what around here.
Yes.
Like explain the benefit to them as well.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. It's
but
good.
also, I can think my husband and I have money dates.
Mhm.
So when it comes to bills and all of that good stuff, I have my own personal money date where I look at
Mhm.
everything that's going on in my business, what money's coming in, what money's coming
Mhm.
out, just making sure that everything looks right, all that good stuff.
Mhm.
And then my husband and I have those times where we talk about, okay, this bill is going to be due. And, hey, we actually have a little bit of money left over this month. Where are we going to put that? Are we going to put it in savings? And
Mhm.
when you establish those times, it kind of gets you both in that headspace to talk about the not as sexy stuff
Mhm. Yep.
so that there is no random, I don't see an email notification about a bill being due. And,
Yeah.
I go in while my husband's watching TV and I'm like, can you believe the electric bill is this high? Like, how many lights are you freaking turning on in this house? You know what I mean? Something like that.
Yes.
Like, we don't do that because there's a time
Mhm.
set aside for that.
Mhm. That's so smart. Sky says she loves the idea of a money date. That's awesome. Yeah, I was thinking about that too. I call it Money Monday. We do a Money Monday in the business, but we don't do that, like personally as well. I think that's such a great idea. Hey, Julian, thanks for tuning in. That's so good. We have a question here submitted. How do you handle disagreements? It's another loaded question.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it is understanding how your partner grew up. So
Mhm.
when my husband and I got married, the very first couple of arguments that we had were a disaster.
Mhm.
And the reason why they were a disaster is because I grew up in a family where people get upset, people get heated, and it's like, okay, everybody, let's just cool your heels a little bit.
Mhm.
Let's go to separate corners. You
Mhm.
know, whole house on a timeout if need be.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And my husband grew up in an environment where arguments happen and let's handle this right now. Let's do this right now.
Mhm.
Let's get it all out. Let's put it all on the table so that we can just do it and be done with it.
Mhm.
So, we had one or two arguments, and from my perspective, it was like, why do you keep badgering about this? Why won't you just let this go for just a moment?
Mhm.
And from his side, I would try to leave the room, and it's like, why are you abandoning me? Why are you turning your back on this
Mhm.
argument? So when we had that understanding about how each other grew up, it was okay, my husband can't handle if I say, I can't do this right now. Let's talk about this tomorrow.
Mhm.
I can't handle, let's stay in this and just fight it out to the end.
Yeah.
So, so
Yeah,
can I
that's
have
so
an
me.
hour? Yeah. So can I have an hour? Let's just separate for an hour. We'll both watch a TV show or whatever, or journal or whatever it is, and then come back. And being able to
Mm.
like set that time, be in a place where we met in the middle,
Mhm.
then that made things so much easier for both of us. And
Yeah.
also having that understanding of being like, okay, this is why she like started to walk away. This was not like an
Mhm.
abandonment or anything like that.
Yeah,
This is how
yeah,
she deals. And for me,
totally.
it was like, he's not trying to hurt my feelings by going on and on.
Mhm. Oh man, that's so good. I'm so glad that you shared that too, because I'm like, I can totally hear myself in that a little bit and my partner a little bit, right? And I feel like though, something like that too will take a lot of time as well, right? I'm pretty sure like it wasn't overnight for you guys to just figure that out. Because I know when you're in the moment, you probably want to just revert to like,
Yeah.
your natural, yeah,
And
yeah,
especially
totally.
for our case, we did not live together before we got married.
Hmm.
So, you have those types of situations where they never really came up in
Hmm.
a dating situation because even when we would have disagreements, like we were both very busy people. So there's always
Yeah,
a very convenience thing of like, I know we're in the middle of a disagreement, but I seriously do have to go. Like I have to go to work or
yeah, yep.
so,
Yeah,
those things
exactly.
become different when you're in the same house.
Hmm. So true. Remind me, how long have you guys been married for?
So we've been married for a little bit over a year now. We've been together for a little bit over 4 years. Um,
Oh, nice.
yeah, so quarantine happened when we celebrated our 1 year anniversary in March.
Oh,
So we had a takeout Olive Garden with a
nice,
candlelight
nice.
and got dressed up and all. That was how we celebrated.
So cute. Oh my gosh, happy anniversary. That's
But
awesome.
yeah, being able to reconcile those things, and I think understanding a person's childhood is so important when it comes to disagreements because so many things come up that when you don't understand
Hmm.
how a person grew up and how they perceive certain things, it seems minor to you,
Hmm.
and you're like, what's the big deal? But it can be huge for them. Like another thing I can think of
Yeah.
is for me, my husband bought a lot of gifts
Hmm.
when we first started dating, and people are like, "Well, what's wrong with that?" Like, no women
Hmm.
want to be
Yep.
showered with stuff, but
Yeah.
but for me, like my parents both, like they still do, even though they're retirement age. My parents both are the types to work very hard and work very long hours. And for my dad, one of the ways that he dealt with that was he would feel guilty about not being home as much,
Hmm.
so he bought a lot of things to
Hmm.
like make
Yeah.
his kids feel better. So, adult me, like I got into adulthood and that was something I hadn't realized in myself. Like it wasn't until my husband and I
Hmm.
started dating that I realized that that was a trigger.
Yeah.
But it was a trigger because I was like, why are you trying to buy me? Like, is this your way of getting out of like spending time? And,
Hmm.
I had to realize that in myself. And then I also had to communicate that to, my then boyfriend, my now husband.
Hmm.
And we had to get to a point where I was like, okay, I prefer experiences. Like, I'm the type of person who
Hmm.
I would rather go to a nice dinner. I would rather
Yeah.
travel, take a road
Yeah.
trip. That is what, for me, that's how I'd rather spend my money. And that's how
Hmm.
I'd rather someone spend money on me.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. Well, you've been to 10 countries, right? So it's like, having those experiences and stuff, that's awesome. I was just thinking about that too. It's like really understanding like those love languages too, right? And because I was even thinking about my personal experience, right? Like I think one of my love languages is gifts. So like I love to show affection by like giving people nice gifts and stuff. But you're right, like it could show up differently for your partner or the people. So true. Hey,
Yeah, and
Lars.
we have
Oh,
that
go ahead.
habit too of showing love in our own
Hmm.
language.
Hmm.
For my husband, his is physical touch, and for me, mine is acts of service.
Hmm.
So, back to like the whole idea of cuddling on the couch and all, like,
Hmm.
I was be like, why aren't you paying attention to me? And like, why aren't you hugging me or cuddling me?
Yep.
And I would be like, don't you see how much I love you? Don't you see how much I'm like cleaning the
Uh-huh.
house and like trying to make sure that we have like a perfect
Yeah.
little home and I'm trying to do this and I'm
Hmm.
trying to do that. And you have to have that awareness that you're like, okay, I'm trying to love him in the way I want to be loved, not in the way that
Hmm.
he needs to be loved.
Yeah. No, totally. Oh, it froze a bit. Can you hear me? Let's see. It's reconnecting.
That'll
Uh-oh. Oh, there you go. Can you hear me? Okay. Hope it comes back. Oh no. All right, I think it's coming back. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah,
Yay,
gotcha.
awesome. Okay, sounds good. Okay, awesome.
But yeah, I
Very
was
good. Well,
saying
thank you
that
so much.
that,
Yeah.
huh? Oh yeah, I
Go
was
ahead.
saying
Go
that
ahead.
that
Sorry.
alone solves so many arguments and disagreements when
Mm-hmm.
you start understanding how your partner needs to be loved.
Mm-hmm. No, that's so true and such good advice. Okay, so I want to wrap up real quick here. Two more questions. So, for what about for like our singles that are in the audience, right? So I know that sometimes we have like this perfect image of who our perfect partner should be, right?
Yeah.
But just really thinking about that. What tips do you have for them as far as like, what can they do for themselves? Because I feel like, what I see happens a lot of times too is I have friends that, they're still single and they're still single because they have like the super long list of what they want their perfect partner to be. And, a nice guy might come around, but she'll totally dismiss him just because he doesn't check all the boxes, right?
Yeah, so for starters, I recently did a video on this about how all relationships are related. And
Mhm,
before you try to get into a romantic relationship and worry about setting boundaries with that partner, make sure you know how to do it with your friends, with your coworkers, with your family.
mhm,
Make sure that your communication skills are solid with those people first, because then once you're able to do that, it definitely transfers into a romantic relationship. It becomes easier to voice your wants and your needs. And then when it comes to making that list of what you want in a partner,
mhm,
the list needs to be based in your needs and
mhm,
how a person adds to your life. You know, I'm not saying that there's something wrong with wanting someone who's 6 feet tall and like dresses like this and all of that.
mhm,
How
mhm,
important is that going to be in your everyday life?
mhm.
What's really going to be more
Yeah.
important are things like, I talk about this all the time. I'm a very type A person,
Mhm,
and my husband is not. And I needed that in a partner because he calms my crazy. He,
mhm, mhm,
when I get to a
mhm.
point where I'm very like, I have deadlines coming up and I'm very tightly wound and I'm stressed
Mhm,
out, he brings me back from that brink of like feeling burned out or feeling stressed
mhm.
because he's
Okay.
able to ground me in reality and be like, hey, like I know this is important, but this is also not going to be the end of the world. Like,
Mhm.
you actually need this thing called sleep is very helpful. You should consider it.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. It's not always about the hustle.
Yeah, so
Good.
it's important to like know what your needs are in your relationship and to find a partner who respects that. Like, again, me with my personal space. I've dated so many men in the past who had no respect for that boundary.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
knowing that that's a need of mine, like when I like healed from those past relationships that I was in, that was like one of the things that I had to immediately start looking for. I
Hmm.
would go on dates and I would be talking to, and I would say things like, "Hey, I can't deal with you calling or texting past a certain time because my sleep is
Hmm.
important to me." Or, I might disappear on you for like a day because
Hmm.
sometimes I just need that day to recharge. And that's what I
Yeah.
was looking for. Who could actually respect that?
Hmm. No, I think that's so good. That's such great advice. Like, just really thinking about like, those wants and needs for your relationship and for yourself. Because I feel like especially like, in today's day and age too, right? With the age of social media, like we want everything to be perfect and picture perfect, right? And it's exactly like you said, like social media is kind of like that highlight reel, right? And
Yeah.
I think a lot of like, when you're finding that true happiness, it's just taking a look in the mirror and like, working on yourself, but also too, just thinking about, like what you need personally and then having that partner support you in those two. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I
Okay.
also
Oh, go
think
ahead.
I was gonna say when it comes to
Hmm.
like looking for perfection in a relationship,
Hmm.
just being very practical. How perfect are you?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Gotta look in the mirror.
so
Totally.
so I
Hmm.
I always tell, my clients, you want the type of respect that you plan on giving to your partner.
Hmm.
You want the type of grace that you plan on giving to your partner. And that is what you're looking for. You're not looking for perfection because you don't want anyone to have those expectations of you.
Hmm. Exactly. Yeah, that's so true. I love how you put that. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay, so last question. I always love to end these Q&As with action steps. So what is one action step that you would recommend, to these young professionals and entrepreneurs as it relates to setting healthy boundaries? Either, maybe it's they need to work on themselves, or like what they can do in, their personal relationships, but also too like in their businesses.
Yeah, I would say look back on your past relationships and even your current ones. So, not just the romantic ones, but
Hmm.
family and friends and coworkers and all. And write down what are your triggers. So,
Hmm.
I remember getting all the time about constant text messages and being
Hmm.
like, okay, so why am I so irritated by this? And for me, it was at the time I worked night shift. So I had people
Hmm.
texting me all the time during the day when I was asleep.
Mm,
And I
right.
had to write
Yep.
down, okay, that is a boundary for me in any future relationship, whether it is, future friends that I meet or a future
Yep.
partner, expressing to them, hey, don't text me or call me between these times. Or,
Mm,
hey, I'm going to put my phone on silent between these times. So if you text me or you
yep.
call me, just know I will not be answering until after this time.
Yeah, that's so good. That's great advice. And I think it's just like, it's doing it for yourself, but it's just going to be for the betterment of the relationship, right?
Yeah,
So
because I
good.
mean, even like you talk about like guilt and boundaries, and
Hmm.
that's oftentimes what I see is someone will like that whole calling after a certain time thing.
Hmm.
That's a true boundary for you because you value your sleep
Yep.
and you don't set the boundary. So then a person like calls beyond the time that you're trying to sleep or whatever, and you answer the
Hmm.
phone grumpy and mean and, like a
Yeah.
witch with a capital B. And,
Yep.
and the person's like, well, what's
Exactly.
wrong with you? And
Hmm.
it is like, yeah, you should be nicer and yeah, they irritated you, but it all started with the fact that you didn't set that boundary to begin with.
Yeah. Exactly. All of this is like, just going back and looking in the mirror, right?
Yeah.
Really just looking at what you're doing for yourself too. That's awesome. Well, Keisha, thank you so much for sharing. And I just really appreciate like all of your advice and your tips and just sharing this with our audience today. It's just so inspiring to hear like your story and like it's kind of crazy that you've been only doing coaching like in a official capacity, for a short period of time, but you've unofficially been doing it for a lot longer, right? So for people that have more questions on boundaries or dating advice, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah,
Oh,
Instagram
okay.
because I live on it. If you go to my
Yep.
bio right now, there's a link to a class I did about embracing your femininity, which is really great. And
Mhm.
also, I just kind of want to leave everyone with watching with knowing that I'm not trying to tell you that boundaries are so easy, that everything is going to
Mhm.
be perfect. It takes time and it takes practice. So as you're learning to do this, give yourself grace.
Yeah, no, totally. You definitely have to be kind to yourself, especially during now, like, with everything that going on. Thank you so much. And, I just appreciate everyone for tuning in. So if you're still watching now or if you're catching the replay, please let me know, as always, your thoughts and feedback. And, if you have any additional questions or if you'd like me to have Keisha on again sometime, this has been really good. And, this is the first time like we've got to meet like face to face sort of together too. So I'm really glad we finally got to because I
Yeah,
love all of your
I'm
content.
glad.
And yeah, no, this has been really good. But thank you again. Hope everyone has a great day and, hope to see you again soon. All right, bye.
Bye, guys.